The judge looked at me and said, "If nobody speaks in the next 10 seconds, your brother will spend 20 years in prison." My legs felt weak. I wanted to shout that my brother was innocent, but I had no proof. The courtroom was completely silent. Every person was waiting. The clock on the wall seemed louder than ever. 10 seconds suddenly felt shorter than a heartbeat. My name is Emma Carter. I was 26 years old, and until 3 weeks earlier, I had lived a quiet life as a librarian in a small town. Then my younger brother, Liam, was arrested for stealing $5 million from the company where he worked. Everyone believed he was guilty. I was the only person who still believed he was telling the truth.
The judge counted slowly. 10, 9, 8. My heart pounded so hard that I could barely breathe. Liam stood behind the glass wall with his hands shaking. He looked at me, not with fear, but with sadness. He knew I had nothing to save him. Then, just before the judge reached 3, an old man stood up from the last row. "Your Honor," he said in a calm voice, "I have information this court has never seen." Every head turned toward him. I had never seen him before. He wore an old brown coat and carried a small leather briefcase. The prosecutor looked annoyed. "Who are you?" he asked. The old man smiled slightly. "My name is Henry Lawson, and if you allow me to speak, this trial will change forever."
The courtroom became completely silent. Henry walked slowly to the front and placed his briefcase on the table. "I am a retired forensic accountant," he said. "For 35 years, I investigated financial crimes." He opened the case and removed several folders. 3 months ago, someone asked me to examine the company where Liam worked. The prosecutor quickly interrupted. "Why was this information never reported?" Henry looked directly at him. "Because the person who hired me died before I finished my investigation." My stomach tightened. The judge leaned forward with interest. Henry continued. "Before he died, he told me one sentence that I will never forget. If anything happens to me, protect the young accountant. He is innocent." Liam stared at Henry with complete disbelief. The judge postponed the final decision for 1 week and ordered both sides to examine Henry's evidence. It was not enough to free Liam, but it stopped the sentence. Outside the courthouse, reporters surrounded us. Cameras flashed in every direction. "Emma, do you still believe your brother is innocent?" someone shouted, who tried to protect Liam. "If they realize I have his files, they may come after both of us next." Henry took me to a small house outside the city. It looked ordinary, but inside, every shelf was filled with boxes, papers, and old computers. He carefully locked the front door before speaking again. "The company did not lose $5 million, he said. It lost almost $40 million. I felt my hands become cold. Then why blame Liam for only 5? Henry spread several documents across the table. Because $5 million is believable, $40 million would bring national investigators. I slowly looked through the papers. Every page contained numbers, names, and secret payments. Then I noticed one signature that made me freeze. It belonged to Olivia Grant, the company's chief financial officer. She had personally thanked Liam at the company party only 2 weeks before his arrest. Suddenly, nothing made sense anymore. I spent the entire night reading Henry's files. The deeper I looked, the stranger everything became. Liam's name appeared only a few times, but Olivia Grant's signature was everywhere. There were secret transfers, fake suppliers, and payments sent to companies that did not seem to exist. "If all this is true," I said, "why hasn't anyone stopped them?" Henry closed another folder inside. "Because the people behind this are powerful. They know judges, politicians, and business leaders." Before I could answer, someone knocked on the front door. 3 slow knocks, then silence. Henry's face changed immediately. He quietly turned off every light in the house and whispered, "Don't make a sound. Nobody should know we're here." We waited in complete darkness. I could hear my own breathing. Another knock came, louder this time. Then I heard footsteps walking around the house. Someone was looking through the windows. Henry slowly opened a small cabinet and handed me a flash drive. "If anything happens," he whispered, "protect this before you protect me." My hands trembled as I took it. After several long minutes, the footsteps disappeared. We stayed silent for another 10 minutes before Henry finally looked outside. The yard was empty, but fresh tire marks covered the wet ground. Whoever had come knew exactly where to find him. They had not chosen the house by accident.
The next morning, Henry called an old friend named Judge Rebecca Moore. She had retired 2 years earlier, but was known for her honesty. Instead of asking questions over the phone, she insisted on meeting us in person. We met inside a crowded train station where nobody would notice 3 strangers talking together. After reading several documents, Rebecca looked deeply concerned. "These papers are real," she said quietly, "but they are still not enough." My heart sank. "Then Liam will lose?" She shook her head. "Not if we find the missing witness." I looked at her in confusion. "What witness?" Rebecca folded the papers carefully. "The man who created the fake companies disappeared the day after Liam was arrested." Henry immediately recognized the name written in Rebecca's notebook. It was Ethan Brooks, a quiet computer programmer who had worked in the finance department for only 6 months before suddenly resigning. Nobody had seen him since. According to the company records, he had moved overseas, but Rebecca did not believe that story. "People who disappear usually leave a trail," she said. Henry opened one of his notebooks and smiled for the first time in days. "I know someone who owes me a favor." That afternoon, we drove to a small coastal town where Henry's former investigation partner owned a private detective agency. As soon as we entered, the detective looked at Henry and said, "You're too late. Someone else came looking for Ethan yesterday." The detective's name was Samuel Reed. He locked the office door before speaking. "The 2 men who came yesterday were not police officers," he said. "They showed fake badges, asked about Ethan, and searched my files after I refused to help." Samuel placed a security photo on the desk. I immediately recognized one of the men. He had been standing behind Olivia Grant during Liam's first court hearing. Henry's expression grew serious. "They're cleaning up every loose end," he said. Samuel nodded. "I followed them after they left. They drove to an abandoned warehouse near the harbor." My heart raced. If Ethan was still alive, perhaps he was there. If not, we were already running out of time. That night, we drove to the old warehouse, but we left the car 2 streets away. The building looked empty except for one small light near the back door. Samuel handed Henry a pair of binoculars. "Watch the entrance," he whispered. I stayed behind a broken wall, trying to stay calm. 20 minutes passed before a black van arrived. 2 men carried several boxes inside. Then another man stepped out. My heart almost stopped. It was Ethan Brooks. He was alive, but his hands were tied. "They are keeping him here," I whispered. Henry nodded slowly. "Then we have one chance to bring him out before they make him disappear forever."
Samuel quietly called a police officer he trusted from an old investigation. "I need help," he said, "but only from people you would trust with your own family." 30 minutes later, 3 unmarked police cars surrounded the area without turning on their lights. Everything happened very fast. Officers entered through the front while another team moved to the back. We heard shouting, then glass breaking. A few men tried to escape, but they were quickly arrested. Henry and I stayed outside until an officer waved us forward. Ethan was sitting on the ground, frightened but alive. When he saw Henry, tears filled his eyes. "I tried to tell the truth," he whispered. "They said they would kill me if I spoke."
The next morning, Ethan agreed to give a full statement. He explained that Olivia Grant and several executives had forced him to create fake companies used to hide millions of dollars. When Liam discovered unusual payments, they needed someone to blame before the annual audit. Ethan refused to lie at first, but after receiving threats against his wife and young daughter, he signed false documents. "I have lived with this guilt every day," he said quietly. "Liam never stole anything. He was the only honest person in that office." Every word was recorded. For the first time since Liam's arrest, I truly believed justice was finally within reach. The courtroom was even more crowded than before. Reporters filled every seat, and television cameras waited outside. Olivia Grant arrived wearing an expensive suit and a confident smile. That smile disappeared when Ethan walked into the courtroom, under police protection. He looked directly at her and calmly told the judge everything. One by one, the secret payments, fake companies, and hidden bank accounts were revealed. When the judge returned, his voice was calm but firm. "All charges against Liam Carter are dismissed immediately." I closed my eyes as tears ran down my face. Liam turned toward me with the biggest smile I had seen in years. The judge continued speaking. Arrest warrants were issued for Olivia Grant and the executives who had organized the fraud. Police officers stepped forward as Olivia stood frozen in disbelief. She looked at Henry with anger, and then at me, but neither of us looked away. A few minutes later, Liam walked out of the courtroom a free man. He hugged me tightly and whispered, "You never stopped believing in me." At that moment, I realized that sometimes the truth moves slowly, but when it finally arrives, life should have returned to normal, but it did not. 2 days after Liam came home, Henry received a phone call that changed everything again. Someone had broken into his office. The thieves ignored the computers, the cash, and even his expensive camera. They stole only one thing: his personal investigation diary. "That book contains names I never gave to the police," Henry said. "If the wrong people find it first, they will know exactly who helped us." Liam looked worried. "Does that mean they know about us?" Henry answered honestly. "Not yet, but they will soon." For the first time since the trial ended, I felt the same fear return to my heart. That evening, a black envelope appeared in our mailbox. There was no stamp and no return address. Inside was a single sheet of paper with one short message: "Stop asking questions if you want your family to stay safe." Liam immediately wanted to call the police, but Henry stopped him. "This letter was delivered to scare you," he said. "Fear makes people make mistakes." Then he smiled slightly. "Fortunately, the people behind this letter made one mistake first." He pointed to a tiny mark left by a rare printer model. "Every machine leaves small fingerprints. I know someone who can identify this one." Suddenly, the game was not over yet. Henry's old friend worked in a government document laboratory. After examining the paper, she discovered that the printer belonged to a private office rented under a false company name. The police searched the building the next morning. Inside, they found empty filing cabinets, burned papers, and several hard drives that had not been completely destroyed. One officer called Henry only an hour later. "You were right," he said. "This place was used to hide financial records." More importantly, investigators found evidence connecting the fraud to an international money laundering network. Liam had never been the real target. He had simply discovered something much bigger than anyone had imagined. Several months later, the investigation officially ended. More than 20 people were arrested across 3 different cities. Millions of dollars were recovered and returned to the company. Liam received a public apology from the court and was offered his old job back, but he surprised everyone by refusing. "I don't want to spend my life in the place where I lost my name," he said. Instead, he accepted a position helping financial investigators detect fraud before innocent people could be blamed. Henry smiled proudly. Sometimes the worst chapter prepares us for the best one, he said. This time, those words did not sound like advice. They sounded like the simple truth. One quiet afternoon, Liam and I visited the small town where our parents were buried. We placed fresh flowers beside their graves and told them everything that had happened. For a long time, none of us spoke. Finally, Liam broke the silence. If you had given up that first day in court, I would still be in prison. I shook my head. I wasn't the brave one. Henry stood up when everyone else stayed silent. As if someone had heard his name, Henry slowly walked toward us, carrying 3 cups of coffee. We laughed together for the first time in many months. The fear was finally gone, replaced by something we had almost forgotten: peace. As we left the cemetery, I looked back only once. I knew our lives would never be the same again. But this time, the future no longer frightened me. It finally felt like home.